So, as we get started this morning, I want to encourage you in this, is that the reason that we gather is because Jesus is risen, that Jesus defeated death, that Jesus is the one who paid the price for our sin and showed that not only did he have authority over sin, but he has authority over death. And as a result, he shows us that we have hope in the resurrection. And that is why we meet as the church. That is why we meet Sunday after Sunday after Sunday. Because it's through the resurrection that Jesus shows how much he loves us. And love is a word that I want to start with today. Have you noticed how easily we use the word love? I love that burger. It is so good, right? I love it. I love my sports team. Go Sports. Because I didn't want to offend anybody with a sports team. Okay. I love that show. In fact, I've watched all the seasons of it. There's like 20 seasons. Yeah, I started last week. I love how convenient this makes my life. We say, I love this and I love that. And we use it so often that I feel that the word itself can start to lose meaning, start to lose its weight. Because if everything is love, then nothing really is. And deep down, deep in the very core of ourselves, we are searching. We are looking for something that is real. We're looking for a love that is not surface level, a love that is not like I love pizza and I love my car. We're looking for a love that is not temporary, one that doesn't fade away. We're looking for one that is not based on our performance. We're searching for a kind of love that doesn't leave when life gets hard. We're looking for a kind of love that doesn't disappear when we're at our worst. Because if we're honest, most of us know what it's like to be loved when we're doing well. We know what it's like to be loved when you're on the winning team. We know what it's like to be loved when everything is going up and to the right. We know what it's like to be loved when we're firing on all cylinders. But the real question is, what kind of love meets you when you're not at your best? When you've made a mistake? What kind of love meets you when you carry regrets? What kind of love meets you when you feel the weight of something that you simply cannot undo? And that's where the question of love gets real. Now, it's not when your life is polished, but when your life is broken, that our understanding of love takes deeper meaning. And this is why Easter matters. Because Easter is not only about the empty tomb. Easter is about a love that stepped into the worst of our reality and didn't turn away. Easter shows us what love really costs. Easter shows us what love is, and Jesus didn't leave us guessing about what real love looks like just before he went to the cross. Jesus spelled out what love is, and he didn't describe it generally. It wasn't a general description of love. He described what he was about to do. Jesus defined love not with a theory. I think, for you to really experience love, the kind of thing that you need to do is you need to think about this part of the equation and that part of the equation, put them together, and you get some love. He didn't define it in poetry. It wasn't roses are red and violets are blue, sugar is sweet, now who are you? But he defined it in a single, unmistakable statement. In John 15:13, Jesus says this, greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. Jesus said, no greater love. Let's sit in that for a moment. What Jesus didn't say is, greater love. You guys, I was thinking about this the other day. Guys, love is a feeling. And it's a feeling that starts in your pinky toe. He didn't say that. He didn't say, hey, love is saying the right words all the time. He didn't say, you know what? It doesn't matter what you do. Love is just about your intentions. If you meant for it to go well, if you meant to say the right thing, then it's okay. He doesn't say love is the right words. He says, great love is sacrifice. Real love costs something. And it's not something small. The greatest love, the greatest demonstration of love requires the greatest sacrifice. Love is not proven by what you say. Love is proven by what you're willing to give. And here's what makes this statement of Jesus so powerful. Jesus doesn't just say it, he lived it. Because not long after speaking those words, greater love has no one than this, that he should lay down his life for his friends, he would walk toward a cross. And it wasn't by accident, it wasn't by force. He would walk there by choice. So when you look at the cross is not simply looking at suffering. The cross is love on display. The cross is likely one of the most recognized symbols in the world, but I believe that familiarity can make us forget what actually happened there on the cross. Jesus was betrayed. He was arrested. He was beaten. He was mocked. He was crucified. He was nailed to a cross, not for his sins, but for ours. And we've heard that before. But the question is, why? Why would he do that? Why would he stay on the cross when he had the power to come down? Why would he go that far? Why would he do so much? John 15:13 answers that question because there is no greater love. There's no greater love than to lay down your life for your friends. And the good news is that he didn't wait for us. He didn't wait for us to get it together. He didn't say, listen, if you would just kind of wrap this mess up, if you could, what you're calling your life, could you get that all wrapped up here? And if you do that, I'll love you more. He didn't say, hey, listen, if you'll just act better, if you'll do better things and do the things that receive love, maybe you'll get love. He didn't say, if you'll just clean yourself up. Instead, he moved toward us. Jesus moved toward us in the middle of our sin. He moved toward us in the middle of our brokenness. He moved towards us in the middle of our failure. And that's not conditional love. That's not earned love. But that is love given. And here's what we often miss. If the cross only showed us love, that would be powerful. The love of Jesus not only shows something, it does something. This is where it needs to get deeply personal for us. Jesus not only defines love, but Jesus demonstrates love. And what makes this even more incredible is what his love does. Jesus' love moves. It moves towards you. Even while you're still in your sin, it moves towards you. Jesus' love restores you. It says, I want to make you new. Jesus' love transforms you. You once were dead, but now you're alive, because the reality is every single person that walked in this building today has been carrying something. It may not be visible, and it may not be anything that you've spoken out loud, but what you're carrying is absolutely real. It may be regret from what you wish you would have done, something that you wish you could undo, shame from something that you hope upon hope that no one figures out, that no one ever finds out what you have done, what you have said. It may be pain from something that has been done to you, or loss, a loss that changed you. It marked a difference in you for the rest of your life. And over time, here's what happens. All of those things begin not just floating around, they begin to settle. They settle not only in your mind and change the way that you think, but they settle in your heart. Until what you're carrying, until those burdens, those losses, that shame, until what you're carrying, it starts to feel like it is absolutely part of who you are. I can't see where my pain begins in my life, because it's like it's always been there. So looking through the Bible, I feel like there's a word for that. And today I want to contend that the word for that is ashes. Ashes are what's left after something has been burned down. Ashes is what's left after something that once had life, now something that once had beauty, something that once mattered, it's now reduced to, and it feels like, nothing. And now it feels like all that remains, and all that's left behind is nothing. And if we're honest, some of us didn't walk in with problems. We walked in with ashes. Because life has literally burned us down. And we feel like there's nothing left. If we were to go ahead and try to light a fire with ashes, what happens? Nothing. Because there's nothing left to burn. There's nothing left to give. And Jesus demonstrated his love at the cross. And he sees what you are carrying. He sees the ashes. And the love of Jesus refuses to leave you there. Early in Jesus' ministry, he went to his hometown. He went back home. Jesus, he just said, you know what? I'm going to go and I'm going to see my hometown, and it's going to be great. Okay, he probably didn't say that. But in Luke chapter 4, here's what happened. Luke chapter 4, starting in verse 14, it says that Jesus returned in the power of the Spirit, and news about him spread throughout the countryside. So Jesus, hometown boy makes big, right? That's kind of the headline that's going into this story, that Jesus returned to Galilee in the power of the Spirit, and the power of the Spirit went before him, and it spread, news of him coming spread throughout the countryside, because it wasn't only Jesus coming in, is what he was doing. He was teaching in their synagogues. It was like, okay, this is great. He came in, they're like, hey, Jesus, sign my scroll. He's like, okay, great, probably not. But here he is, the verse continues. He was teaching in their synagogues. He was teaching, they said, good word, Jesus. We appreciate how you read that and how it came together, and that's good teaching. Everyone praised him. And then he went to Nazareth, where he'd been brought up. And he went on Sabbath day into the synagogue. Look at that practice of Jesus. He went into the synagogue on the Sabbath. It was his custom. something he regularly did. And so Jesus went into the synagogue, as was his custom. He stood up to read the scroll, and the scroll of the prophet Isaiah was handed to him. Now, Isaiah was a prophet hundreds of years before Jesus ever walked on the earth, and God gave a promise. God gave a promise through the prophet Isaiah. Isaiah told a promise about what the Messiah would come to do. Jesus intentionally opens up the scroll, kind of goes down, because it wasn't a book, right? He scrolls down, and he finds these words. It begins with these words, found in Isaiah chapter 61. It says, "The Spirit of the sovereign Lord is on me." Jesus, reading in his hometown, comes to this spot and declares this out loud: "The Spirit of the sovereign Lord is on me, because the Lord has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor." Now, in this moment, they didn't realize it happened, but this is what happened. The words that Jesus spoke transformed from the words of the prophet Isaiah into a proclamation of his intentions in this world. He says, "The Spirit of the sovereign Lord is on me, because the Lord has anointed me to proclaim the good news to the poor." And what proceeds from this is a list of things that Jesus does. This is a list of what love does. So he continues reading. "He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted." The brokenhearted don't just get advice. Listen, I've heard what's been going on with your breakup, and that's really sad. And I think it's one of those things that maybe, if you just sit in it for a little bit, if you just sit in it, you won't be bound up. But Jesus says this: listen, the brokenhearted will be bound up. They will be healed. They will have care. They will find healing. That's because love heals. So he goes to proclaim freedom, freedom for the captives. Now, the captive doesn't just get direction. The captive gets freedom spoken over them. So for those that feel like they are oppressed, the ones that feel like they are slaves to what's going on, they are the ones that have freedom spoken not only over them, because love liberates and release from darkness the prisoners, the ones who are in the deepest, darkest places, the ones to where the light doesn't touch, they get released. Not only do they get released, they step into the light because love reconciles. Why? To proclaim the year of the Lord's favor and the day of vengeance of our God. You're like, that sounds pretty heavy. It means this: to proclaim the blessings of God over all the earth and God's condemnation and defeat of death, of sin. So they step into the light. The ones that were bound, the ones that were captive, the ones that were in the darkest of places, they step into the light and they reconcile others. They have been reconciled and they reconcile others. They get to step into the ministry of reconciliation. They get to proclaim freedom and release everything that they've been given, because they recognize that they are sent and that they own nothing. It all belongs to God. So in this, love will comfort those who mourn. The one who mourns doesn't just get that statement, "Hey, it'll get better." They're comforted. They get the hug and the "I'm just going to sit with you for a while and we don't need to talk" kind of moments. Because love stays close. So they get all these things. All of this happens to bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes. Isaiah declares that the power of the sovereign Lord is upon him so that all of this brokenness, sin, shame, and all of that stuff can, instead of being sitting in the ashes of everything that's burned down, it can be given a beautiful crown. And the one holding the ashes, the one sitting in the ashes, doesn't get ignored. The one sitting in the midst of brokenness doesn't get shamed. They don't get dismissed. They receive beauty, because love restores what is lost. Then Jesus does something with those ashes of brokenness, the ashes of captivity, the ashes of darkness and mourning. He takes them, he doesn't heap them into a pile, he doesn't scatter them into the wind, he does not stoke the fire of brokenness until they're completely destroyed. Jesus didn't come to manage your ashes. He came to exchange them. And this is why this matters. Because this kind of exchange doesn't happen for free. Ashes have no value. And a crown is worth more than the gold it's cast from. Because that crown speaks about a kingdom. That crown speaks about belonging and bestowing of power and authority. And for you to receive beauty, something had to happen to your ashes. You can't sit and be beautiful in ashes. You have to be taken out. Something had to happen there. For you to be forgiven, someone had to pay. For you to be set free, someone had to take your place. And that's why Jesus said, greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. Because the only way to deal with your ashes was for him to step into them. See, Jesus didn't only die for you, he stepped into what should have been yours. Scripture says that the cost of our sin is death. Jesus stepped into that penalty for us. So now we're not just talking about an abstract love, and we're not talking about general forgiveness, and we're not talking about religious ideas. We're talking about something that is deeply personal. So let me ask you, what burden are you carrying? What regret or shame have you been holding on to? What have you been trying to fix on your own? See, right now, you don't need more information. What you are looking for is transformation. And transformation begins the moment you stop trying to carry what Jesus already died to take. For those in the back, let me say it again. Transformation begins the moment you stop trying to carry what Jesus already died to take. You don't get free by holding on tighter. You get free by letting go. If the story ended at the cross, we would know that Jesus loved us, but we wouldn't know if it worked. We would see sacrifice, but we wouldn't know if it had power. We would see suffering, but we wouldn't know if it brought victory. See, Easter tells us something more. It tells us the story didn't end in a grave, because 3 days later, the stone was rolled away and the tomb was empty and Jesus walked out alive. And it's that moment that changes everything, because the resurrection is not just a miracle, it's a confirmation. It's a confirmation, it's proof, it's validation of everything that Jesus said and did, everything that Jesus was about, everything, all of it was true, it was validation. The resurrection is a declaration that the sacrifice of Jesus was enough. Greater love has no one than this. Greater love has laid down its life. And Jesus picked it right back up again, proclaiming that he has victory, that he has power over sin, he has authority over sin and death. And Jesus, when he read this from Isaiah, he proclaimed in verse 21 of Luke chapter 4, he said, "Today this scripture is fulfilled in your hearing." And at that time, it sounded like a declaration. At that time, it maybe left them scratching their heads. In fact, they're like, isn't this guy Joseph's boy? But after the resurrection, it became a reality. Because of the resurrection, the brokenhearted really can be healed. The captive really can be set free. The sinner really can be finally forgiven. The ashes really can be exchanged. And it's not because we try harder, but because Jesus finished the work. Christianity, it's not built on good advice. Christianity is built on the risen Savior. And we're not gathering today because Jesus gave us a better way to live. We're here because Jesus defeated sin, because Jesus defeated death, because Jesus made a way for us to be restored to God. Jesus is still, if Jesus is still in the grave, then this was a mediocre message, right? But because he is risen, this is an invitation. And that invitation is not general. That invitation is personal, because everything we've talked about today isn't just something Jesus did, it is something that Jesus did for you. What Jesus did for your sin, for your shame, for your regret, for what you've been carrying, for the ashes you walked in with today. So the question is not, did Jesus love? Because he did. The question isn't, did Jesus give his life? Because he did. The question isn't even, did Jesus rise again? Because he did. The question is, what will you do with that love? Because you can't hear a message like this and stay neutral. You cannot encounter this kind of love and remain unchanged. You don't stand in front of a cross and an empty tomb and walk away the same. The love of Jesus does not allow you to remain neutral. The love of Jesus, it calls for a response. And this is where we must be honest. Some people hear about the love of Jesus and they admire it. They think, man, that's just so great. They respect it. They may even agree with it. And they might even believe that it happened, but they never respond to it. People hear about the great love of Jesus and they keep living the same life. They keep carrying the same weight. They keep burning into the same ashes as if nothing has changed. But everything has changed because Jesus laid down his life for you. Greater love has no one than this, that someone would lay down his life for his friends. So we need to say it out loud. You don't define that love. You don't get to define that love. You must respond to it. But here's the catch. You don't improve yourself into it. You surrender to it. You don't receive this love by trying harder or receive it by giving your life. You receive it, though, by giving your life to the one who gave his for you. So let's come back to where we started. What are you carrying? What have you been holding on to? What have you been trying to fix? What have you been trying to manage? What have you been trying to hide from? What have you been trying to outrun? Because some of us, we've been sitting in ashes for a long time. And honestly, we're very used to them. And you've learned how to function with them. You've learned how to smile through them. And you've learned how to explain them all away. But still you carry them. So today, Jesus is not offering advice. He's offering you an exchange, a beautiful crown for your ashes. And there comes a moment. There comes this moment where you stop observing, where you stop ignoring and you stop excusing, and you start responding. And this is that moment. It's not someday. It's not when everything else in life settles down. It's not when you get everything else figured out. It's today. Just as Jesus said, today, this is fulfilled. Today is not just another day. Today is the day of salvation. If you've never given your life to Jesus, this is your moment. It's not your moment to become religious, and it's not your moment to clean yourself up. It's your moment to surrender, to say, I can't carry this anymore. I believe you died for me. I believe you rose again. And I give you my life. And some of you, you've heard this before. You've been around church for a while. You know the language. But if we're honest, you may know the language. You may even show up here regularly, but you have never once surrendered. You've stood near the cross, but you've never responded to it. And today, that changes because there is no greater love than a Savior who saw your sin, stepped into your place, took your ashes, laid down his life, and rose again so you could be made new. So don't leave here unchanged. Don't leave here still carrying what he died to take. Don't leave here admiring a love that you were meant to receive. No greater love has been given. No greater love has been given. Now, a response must be made. This is the moment where eternity changes. Today, you can give your life to Jesus. Would you pray with me?